The Senate Committee on Governance and Finance is in session. I have two announcements. Number 3, SB 516, Senator Correa, and SB 640, Senator Runner, are off the agenda. I believe there's been an agreement among the authors that Senator Padilla will go first. Would you? Oh, do we have a quorum? We have a quorum. Please call the roll.
Wolk.
Here.
Wolk present. Huff. Here. Huff present. DeSaulnier. Fuller. Fuller present. Hancock. Hernandez. Here. Hernandez present. Kehoe. Present. Kehoe present. LaMalfa. Liu.
5-0. We have a quorum. Senator Padilla, this is a good bill, but I believe there are amendments, and why don't you present in terms of the direction that you're moving with this?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And let me begin by thanking Senators Wyland and Vargas for allowing me to go out of order. SB 686 is before you. Just by way of background, the state of California recognizes biotechnology as the application of genetic and cellular research to develop and manufacture pharmaceutical and therapeutic products, as well as diagnostic and medical devices. There's 3 stages to the biotech industry as we know it. There's research, there's development, and there's manufacturing. And while California prides itself in being a vibrant center for the research and development phases of the industry, as evidenced by our preeminent both public and private universities, our access to investment capital in the state as it compares to the rest of the nation combined, our state's R&D tax incentive policies that are in place, culminate in attracting some of the best minds, some of the best researchers throughout the world in the biotech arena here in California. In fact, a couple of the largest patent holders in the country, the UC system and Genentech, for example, are right here in California. As strong as California competes in the R&D facets of the biotech sector, we ought to be embarrassed in terms of how we do on the manufacturing side. We fall significantly short. The abundance of manufacturing incentives in other states, particularly neighboring states, have taken a toll on California's competitiveness to create the jobs in the manufacturing side of this industry here in California. In fact, the recent PPIC report confirms this. While California ranks consistently at the top in terms of access to capital, the state of California is seen as the least competitive when it comes to the manufacturing component. And that's really where a tremendous amount of the economic growth, economic development, and job creation opportunities lie. A major hurdle for this lack of competitiveness is the cost of the equipment necessary to manufacture biotech products. If a company is actually making the investment in manufacturing equipment, we know that they're doing it to expand capacity and create jobs. Yet California is one of only 3 states in the nation that taxes this manufacturing equipment, providing a significant disadvantage. The bill before you will allow California to become much more competitive by creating a sales tax exemption on manufacturing equipment focused very narrowly on this biotech sector. I introduced this bill this year to try to follow up on the success of last year's SB 71, where we did very much the same thing, focusing specifically on the clean tech sector. That bill established specific criteria that included job creation numbers that needed to be met, as well as net revenue benefit to the state that needed to be demonstrated. The Treasurer's Office reports that within the first 2 months alone, there's 27 companies that participated in that program, creating more than 6,000 jobs, and Senator Kehoe accounting for a net revenue to the state of $52 million. This bill seeks to replicate that model, but for the biotech sector. So while I recognize that there may be some upfront fiscal costs to the bill, I believe it's sound policy because it's an industry that is vital to California's economic future. I think it is structured in a way that makes it responsible given our state budget situation. And before I conclude here, I want to acknowledge that I accept the committee amendments suggested that add a sunset, remove the misquoted industry codes, protect the local sales tax elements and add the performance measures that I just mentioned. I would ask for your aye vote or answer any of your questions, but I wanted to introduce Diane Stanton from the Treasurer's Office, who's involved with the CAPER program, as well as Devin Whitney from the California Healthcare Institute for an industry perspective.
All right. Witnesses in support.
Hi, I'm Diane Stanton with the State Treasurer's Office. While we don't have a formal position on the bill, we have been working very closely with the author's office, and I have with me Dina Carrillo to answer any technical questions about the STE program that we've just launched. Thank you.
Madam Chair and members, Devin Whitney with the California Healthcare Institute, representing about 250 of the state's leading biotech and public and private research institutions, here in strong support of SB 686. I know it's no shock to you that California can be a very costly state to do business in, and especially true for manufacturing. In the biotech industry, a lot of these costs are fixed costs that are imposed by the Food and Drug Administration through their current good manufacturing practices, which is a litany of regulations that we as manufacturers must follow in order to be able to manufacture and market our drugs, devices, and biologics nationally. Because of these fixed costs in our manufacturing processes, we look to the states and the policies that they have embraced as ways to mitigate some of these federal costs, and a sales tax exemption on manufacturing equipment is certainly one of those policies that we look for. Unfortunately, as the Senator mentioned, California is one of 3 states that does impose a sales tax on manufacturing equipment, so we think that this would be a good way to help make manufacturing from a biotech perspective more cost-effective here in the state. Again, we certainly understand that there are costs associated with this. Even in a dynamic sense, there are costs associated with the sales tax exemption, and so we commit to you that we would be working with the Senator and his staff to mitigate any general fund costs.
All right. In support.
Thank you. Melissa Cortez Roth on behalf of Bay Bio, Northern California's Life Sciences and Biotechnology Association. As the Senator pointed out, biotechnology was basically started in California. And while we do a very good job of keeping some of these companies here for the research and development portion, there's very little manufacturing for biotechnology done in California. This bill seeks to address that. And where's your support?
Okay. In support.
Madam Chair and members, Maureen Higgins representing Biocom and its over 500 member life sciences companies. As the others have mentioned, the biotech industry is a very important industry to California. It employs over 270,000 Californians. And as the author eloquently pointed out, we're moving from the R&D phase to the manufacturing phase. So we think this is a very important bill for that reason. Thank you.
Further witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Please come forward.
Lenny Goldberg, California Tax Reform Association. As you know, we do not have, we think that that dealing with the sales tax exemption for manufacturing equipment in a broad way as a matter of tax policy is something that the state should do, but it should do it in a context. First of all, the biotechnology industry was the primary advocate for single sales factor. And the argument we heard over and over again was, yes, we're wonderful on the research and development credit, which is a major piece of an expensive piece of our tax system. We are the incubator of biotechnology, but we need to go to single sales factor in order to get manufacturing in California. So the question becomes, how many tax breaks do we need for a particular industry in order to get there? Second question is, whenever we make distinctions in tax policy, there's always somebody who's going to go over the line one way or the other. So should we deal more broadly with the question of depreciable manufacturing equipment on the sales tax and figure out a way to pay for that? Or do we want to create distinctions for particular industries? The third question I have for Senator Padilla's approach to this bill is that I don't see the CAFTA kind of structure in it, which was, and I've talked to Treasurer Locke here, and they put in very, very careful criteria with regard to saying this is new investment that otherwise wouldn't be here, and here are the way we measure the investment. Well, we've done single sales for biotechnology. We have R&D for biotechnology. How are we going to measure the additional benefits from a sales tax exemption? And as we start drawing these lines, you can just see the BOE implementing, is this biotechnology or is it not? You know, the NICS codes are not that specific with regard to exactly what we're doing. So we have given tremendous tax benefits to biotechnology, and single sales was one of them. Now, perhaps my argument has been, although it has been set up for the budget, that if we want to do what the CMTA and we have talked about extensively, is eliminate the sales tax on manufacturing equipment as a matter of tax policy, not for a specific industry that actually is very tax advantaged in California now with single sales. We should turn around, eliminate elective single sales, pick up the $1.3 billion, that number keeps growing every time we look at it, and have not create arbitrary lines in the sand. But I guess the other thing I do want to say is that I don't see the CAFTA type situation here with regard to the guarantee that we will have benefits. We were told that for single sales for biotechnology, for R&D for biotechnology, and it's going to be very, very difficult to sort out additional tax benefit for a particular industry and what difference it makes.
Okay, thank you. Further witnesses in opposition? All right. Questions from the committee? We've asked, I believe you described the amendments that you're willing to take, and I want to thank you for the accepting the ones on performance measures in particular, and the sunset, which is also as part of Senator Dutton's bill, I believe, on exemption for manufacturing. So, are there questions from the committee or a motion? Yeah.
Yeah, I want to thank the author for trying to find some way to help create incentives to bring jobs back to California. Recently, I toured some of the biotech firms down in the San Diego area, and it's amazing what they are doing. It's also amazing how many jobs go to other states because they can't afford to. They can do some of their preliminary stuff here, but then we're just, we're giving away jobs, we're bleeding jobs to other areas. I think this is a step in the right direction. Something we just really don't do here in Sacramento is quantify how tax incentives help bring jobs. We look at it very simple math rather than the calculus that it is, and we say, well, if we're getting a tax break, we're going to lose this money, rather than we give a tax break, it's going to create these jobs, it's going to pay the taxes, and so on and so forth. So I think this is definitely a step in the right direction. I'd prefer not to see the sunset, but I'm not opposed to reviewing things. We want to see if the thing works. And so I would be happy to move your bill.
All right. It has been moved.
Madam Chair?
Do pass as amended. Senator Kehoe.
Thank you. Just a few questions or comments.
Sure.
What is the sunset?
7 years.
7 years, okay. And then, Senator, you said the previous clean tech bill from last year resulted in a $52 million net benefit. Is that correct? Who assesses that and how?
The Treasurer's Office monitors that by actually handling the specific applications and transactions for the sales tax exemption. So they monitor not just the upfront cost to the state from a sales tax relief side, but part of the application requires the number of jobs to be outlined, and you kind of run the model based on payroll tax that's going to be involved and other economic activity that's a result of the manufacturing expansion. There's net revenue to the state in other areas. So when you do the addition and subtraction, there's got to be the net benefit to the state.
Senator Kehoe, if I may interject for a moment, what we've done in the amendments is ask the LAO to report to the JLBC. However, we want to continue to work with the author on the Treasurer's language and be able to call it back to committee for review if necessary, because I think that's the direction, and that may be the better way to go.
Yes,
So
I'm pleased to hear you say that, Senator Wolk. Does the Treasurer's Office know what the business would have bought without the tax credit? I mean, what's the kind of the delta, what they would have done anyway?
Good morning. My name is Dina Carrillo, and I'm the program manager at CAPTA. The way we quantify the fiscal and environmental benefits is we actually look at there's an assumption in our regulations in the model that we developed. So we look at the marginal increase of the additional equipment they buy based on the sales and use tax exclusion they receive, which is estimated about 9.1%. So we actually don't calculate the whole project. We evaluate when we do the net benefit on the marginal increase in production that will occur based on their receiving this type of financial assistance.
Okay. And then, Senator, you said that you want to do a CAFTA-like program.
Well,
what's wrong with doing CAFTA?
Well, I think structurally that's one of the policy choices for us as a body.
And is that where is that the discussion that's going to continue between the author and the committee?
Yes.
Okay.
You know, I think when we brought forward SB 71 last year, we recognized that there was an existing fiscal authority already in the Treasurer's Office, a mechanism, if you will,
That's right.
that was already geared towards alternative energy, the clean tech sector. So we sort of broadened and redefined that to serve this function. But that existing authority, that existing mechanism had previously been defined for that sector. This is biotechnology. Do we morph that existing mechanism and entity into more of the fiscal mechanism and make secondarily, whether it's clean tech or biotech or anything else? Or do we create a sort of a parallel mechanism with a lot of the same parties, if not all the same parties, to look at the biotech as a unique industry, but have all the same criteria of job creation, net revenue to the state, et cetera, et cetera. I think that's what we're working out with committee staff and certainly your staff as this bill will go through appropriations.
I like what you're saying. I would like to have it more refined. You know, I'm from a biotech capital in our state, and it is doing extremely well, and we are adding jobs across the state. Research and development are the high wage, you know, very important part of that sector. So manufacturing is a strong component, but we, in San Diego, we have a lot of research and development that are tied to the universities and independent research organizations that are high wage, high value, a very important part of our economic sector. So, you know, we want to be supportive, but I noticed the analysis says, I think BOE estimates about $74 million in cost to the state in the first half year. So I just want to tell you, as it goes into approps, we'll have to look at those fiscal costs very hard, and I would like to see the structure, whatever the committee does with it, that it's as accountable as possible on the public benefit. And Absolutely. If it's paying off for the public, good, I'm there. But we really have to, I think, show more transparency and accountability on some of the tax credits. Mm-hmm. So I'll support it this morning.
Thank you.
All right. Further comments? We have a motion. The motion is to pass as amended to appropriations, again with the understanding that the author will continue to work with the committee on the treasurer language and these other issues, also with the BOE, and we'll call it back to the
Madam
committee.
Chair, if I may close?
Yes, indeed.
And address some of the issues that Mr. Goldberg raised, as well as issues that have come up in the discussion. First of all, as it pertains to how fiscally responsible this bill is or this bill is not, we're working in partnership with Treasurer Lockyer, who not only over the years, but in recent weeks and months has been one of the more hawkish state leaders as it pertains to our budget situation. And I know he's committed, if I can speak for him, on making sure that this bill is crafted in a way that respects the state's budget situation and indeed guarantees that there's net revenue to the state, given some initial state investment on the front end, number one. Number two, I forgot to mention in my presentation that Senator Strickland desires to be a co-author on this, so since we're taking amendments, I'd like to incorporate that as well. The reference that was made to single sales factor by Mr. Goldberg, I think is a valid discussion, but misses the point of this specific bill. I mentioned there's different phases of a company that wishes to succeed in the biotech arena. The early R&D phase, then there's the movement from R&D. Once you got that product or once you have that therapy or the device, then you move into the manufacturing sector. And if you're lucky, if you're fortunate enough to be so successful that single sales factor becomes a concern to your accountants, that's great. We're talking about a whole lot of companies who are far short of being concerned about single sales factor. There's companies that have not only the economic contributions potential to the state, but the potential to improve people's quality of life. And they're right on the edge. They have their new idea, they have their new product, and it's going to get manufactured either in the state or outside the state. And respectfully, Senator Kehoe mentions that maybe in the San Diego area they're doing great when it comes to R&D, whether it's university-based or university-affiliated. Even in the Silicon Valley, there's a lot of synergy because of the research that's done there, academic and otherwise. And that's wonderful for the high-end people with the masters and the PhDs that can participate in that part of the economy. But for the middle class and the working class of our state, who have a tremendous opportunity to get into the manufacturing sector of a growing industry, an industry that is critical to California's future and indeed our nation's future. They deserve the opportunity to get those good jobs here in California and not have to chase those jobs to Arizona, to Texas, to Utah, or anywhere else. So I wanted to call out the difference between R&D, early manufacturing, and eventual single sales factor type of discussions and debates. That I felt needed to be addressed. So with that, I appreciate the discussion. I appreciate your support. Would ask for your aye vote, and working with the chair if there's a need to bring this bill back to this committee after further amendments, then I'm happy to do so.
All right. The motion is due pass as amended to appropriations. Please call the roll.
Wolk.
Aye.
Wolk, aye. Huff. Huff, aye. DeSaulnier. Fuller. Fuller, aye. Hancock. Hernandez. Hernandez, aye. Kehoe. LaMalfa. LaMalfa, aye. Liu. 5-0.
5-0. That has enough votes to get out, but I'll leave it open for the other members to add on.
Thank you very much.
All right, Senator Weiland, are you here? Yes, there you are. Come forward. Item number 1, SB 228, on the taxation of state tax liens. All right, Senator.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. SB 228 is intended to be a pro-consumer, pro-small business bill that simply conforms state tax law procedure with what the federal government has been doing with the IRS for some time now. Currently, a state tax lien attaches to any real or personal property of a taxpayer for the purpose of securing unpaid debt. While that lien is in place, it makes it very difficult for that taxpayer to get credit or loan, and can ultimately cripple that taxpayer in terms of maintaining a business or getting new credit. What this bill does is authorizes, it doesn't mandate, but it authorizes a state tax lien to be withdrawn when that debt is satisfied. It's important to understand the distinction between a release and a withdrawal. Currently, if a tax lien is paid, the lien, the amount owed, penalties, interest is paid, then the lien is released. But unfortunately, the notice of that lien can continue on a credit report for up to 10 years, even though it's been satisfied. The federal government and the IRS had a policy that allowed this lien to be withdrawn upon the request of the taxpayer, and then very recently decided that it was always in the government's best interest to withdraw this lien, which removes it from the credit report. And if we think of the lien as having the purpose of ensuring that there is collection of the money due, it seems only reasonable that once that has occurred, that there no longer be a continuing penalty that the taxpayer has to suffer with the lien still being on the record. So that's the basic essence of the bill. It's intended to allow those who've, in good faith, paid a bill that's due to have it removed from their credit report. For many small businesses, this enables them to get lines of credit. This is where jobs are created. And for individuals, it allows them to be able to get credit to do things such as buy homes. So that's the essence of the bill. I have with me the sponsor of the bill, former Senator Runner, member of the Board of Equalization.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. As a member of the Board of Equalization, I'm pleased to sponsor this bill. SB 228 will help California job creators who are survivors in the worst economy downturn here in California since the Great Depression. The Board of Equalization has issued an increasing number of liens, more than 14,000 in the most recent fiscal year. The board typically releases about 3,000 liens a year. SB 228 gives California's tax agencies the needed flexibility to deal fairly with taxpayers who are victims of this economy. Under the current law, the board does not have the authority to withdraw a lien, even if the lien is placed in error. While we may, in that system, we may include language, but yet it still remains on the report. There are other instances as well where a withdrawal would be more appropriate than a release. For instance, a taxpayer deemed as an innocent spouse with regard to the debt. A taxpayer who didn't receive notification of the debt and immediately pays it off when they're made aware of it. We are asking for statutory discretion so the board can exercise good judgment in these cases. We are in communication with the opposition that we received yesterday, and have had good conversations, and I think we are confident that those discussions can continue and that we will be able to find common ground to meet everybody's goals, and thank you for your consideration. Also, I have with me Gina Fong from the Board of Equalization to answer any of those hard technical questions that may come up that Senator Weiland and I would not know the answer to.
All right, in support.
Madam Chair, members, David Wolf here with the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. We're in support of the bill. And let me just underscore, I mean, obviously we want individuals to pay their taxes, and obviously the method of a lien is an important enforcement device to ensure that those taxes are paid. However, if you've paid your taxes, or if it's a case of mistaken identity, let's say there's another David Wolf out there and the agency by mistake applies the lien to them, you shouldn't have this hanging over your head for the next 6 or 7 years. And we just believe if taxpayers in good faith pay those bills, they should have the lien withdrawn by the credit agencies. So this gives the FTB the authority to do that. Again, it doesn't mandate it, which Senator Weiland mentioned. We're thankful for that, and we'd ask for your support. Thank you.
Lenny Goldberg, California Tax Reform Association. You know, I work on the consumer side on a lot of credit reporting issues, and the credit reporting agencies are often very difficult to deal with when you have some holdover like this. From our perspective, the ability to offer a withdrawal of the lien, I believe, and you know, we can reconsider if this is not the case, but I believe it will be a benefit not just to taxpayers, but to the collection of unpaid taxes. If you say, pay now, and the lien does not go on your credit record, that is an incentive to the taxpayer to pay now. If they do not pay now, then you have the continued lien. I think the proof of this will be in its implementation, but in fact it may very well encourage the payment of taxes because of the implications for the credit record. So I'm not sure I see the downside to this bill. I think it's probably worth pursuing.
All right. Further witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? All right. Comments by the come forward. That's fine. Okay. Welcome.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Senators. Julianne Broyles here on behalf of Equifax. Briefly, I want to first apologize for the late notice to the committee and to the author and the sponsor about the opposition. We had taken some time to review the amendments that had been made and do regret that we came in late on the bill. However, Equifax is concerned about the overall impact of the withdrawal versus the release. When you withdraw an item from a lien off of for a tax lien, you remove it from the credit report, and there may have been good reason that was there on the credit report. We are concerned that as this is currently written, it might actually go to the integrity of the credit report. If you have a bill that you haven't paid, it is something that should be reflected on that credit report. We have had what we believe are very productive discussions with the author and the sponsor, but as written today, we just cannot remove our opposition. So I would ask for a no vote.
All right, thank you. Further witnesses in opposition? All right, hearing none, comments by the committee or motion? I'd like to, all right. It's been moved, and that's as amended? No, it's just the movement of the bill? The committee analysis recommended removing the FTB and just leaving the BOE. Is that something you want to consider as the maker of the motion? Yeah. I'll let you think about that. Let me make some comments first. I was going back and forth on this bill, frankly, Senator Weiland. It wasn't until February that the IRS changed their position, so I wasn't sure what impact it may have had in terms of collections, which was one of the issues raised. Certainly, if there's an error, it is withdrawn, and that is the case in California as well, is it not? For FTB, not BOE. For FTB, but not BOE. I am concerned. I think that there is a reason for the credit. I think I'm trying to decide in my mind whether it's important for the credit for the credit companies to have the credit reports to have a record of this, because by the time it gets to the lien, you have a situation where a person has had many opportunities to pay their taxes and did not. So I'm not at all certain that there ought not be available to the credit, that doesn't go to the heart of their credit risk. I'm still looking at this. You may well have the votes to get this out today, but I think today I'm going to vote.
If I could make an attempt, sure, Madam Chair, right here and now, to change your mind. I think there are 3 or 4 things. As just a practical matter, of the 3 major credit bureaus, we have one who's come forward. Mm-hmm. The effect of this, as someone who is in a business where we granted a great deal of credit, is to, once a bill has actually been paid, to continue to, in effect, either deny credit or make credit much more difficult or much more expensive, it seems to me unfairly. And I think it's also instructive that not a single credit granting agency, those who consume and buy these credit reports, is here in opposition to this. In other words, they're not saying, gee, if we don't have this information, we can't make a good credit evaluation. I think what their absence is saying is that we can make a good credit decision. And I know in my own business, we were able to do that because we were small enough that if there were a problem with the credit, we could actually look at and interview that individual applicant for credit. But in the world we live in today, unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And any of us who's tried to refinance anything, any business that's tried to get a credit line, which is increasingly, because unfortunately banks are not doing things they ought to do, in my opinion, they look for any little thing. And they aren't able often, or don't, or choose not to, actually take the time to find out what the situation is. So imagine I'm a small business and I need that credit line to survive. I've not been able to pay, and now I've paid it off, but I can't survive unless I have that credit line. And what's happening today, unfortunately, and frankly it infuriates me, frankly, is that many lenders are using any excuse to deny that credit. So there you have an instance where these are the very economic engines that we need to grow the economy. So I'm concerned about the inequity of it. I'm concerned that the IRS, although it is recent, could do it before. Now it's mandated. None of the other credit reporting agencies have come forward, and most importantly, those who actually use that service to make a decision, they haven't come forward and said, we can't make an intelligent decision. So what I would propose is that if we can move the bill forward today, we're willing to work, and we've made it clear in conversations with the FTB, we're willing to work with them in any modification that they believe is necessary.
Okay.
Just a couple of observations.
That's okay. I think, Senator LaMalfa, your motion then?
Well, at the pleasure of the author here, my own observation or opinion on it is that if it was the BOE only, the BOE actually has a better process of appeals through the board by a person with a dispute than the FTB does. So if you were to pick one, in my way of seeing it, you would pick the FTB. But I'd personally rather see the bill move with both BOE and FTB being a part of your goals here, but I would leave it to, you know, as a maker of the motion where you would like to go in the direction of the bill. So I'd be happy with keeping the motion as not amended. But
yeah, I think actually as of recently, like yesterday, I think we just received some information back from the FTB of some language that they're moving on and that they're willing to look at with us. So my only concern is we can go ahead and take the FTB out. I just think it may be premature because I think there's discussions going on with the FTB right now. You know, in regards to the issue, in regards to the opposition issue, you know, in my conversation with the opposition yesterday, they weren't even aware of the IRS change. Now, remember, the change that took place in March was that would become their practice in all these situations. Up to March, they had the same discretion that we're talking about here. So there was no change that took place in March that isn't different from this bill. They've always had that. And so in our conversations with the opposition, they were not aware of the IRS situation. They were not aware of the fact that the BOE did not have the discretion, even when these issues where you got an innocent spouse and some of those situations. So I would hope that the goal would be if we can move the bill forward in its content now, we certainly understand and will deal with continue to work with the committee to make sure the guidelines or their concerns that the committee has dealt with are met. And certainly, once it is that we hear definitely from the FTB that they have concerns and are concerned about it, we will immediately drop them from the bill.
All right, I think I'm getting convinced. So the motion is do pass to appropriations, and with the understanding that you'll continue to work with the committee, and in particular with the BOE and the FTB on what their issues are. So with that, let's call the roll.
Wolk.
Aye.
Wolk, aye. Huff. Saunier. Fuller. Aye. Fuller, aye. Hancock. Hernandez. Kehoe. LaMalfa. Aye. LaMalfa, aye. Liu.
3-0. You need 5 votes. We'll wait till the rest of the committee returns.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair,
All right.
members.
Senator Vargas, thank you for waiting. Item number 2, good bill. Recommendation is to pass as amended. A positive change. Been a contentious issue. Good. Go forward.
I ask for your aye vote.
Tell us what
well, thank you very much for allowing me to present today SB 314. I will be brief then. And I am pleased, obviously, to accept as author's amendments the committee's recommendation. SB 314 provides that a county assessor may levy an escape assessment on a military housing project within 4 years after the July 1st of the assessment year in which the property tax savings are withdrawn from reserve account when the military requires a reserve account for use in future project construction. This bill is intended to help military personnel and their families stationed in California by providing counties with the ability to ensure that any savings, any tax savings, will benefit the residents of the military housing. I would respectfully ask for your aye vote. Jim Lantry is here representing the Duluth Family Housing to provide further testimony, which
Welcome.
I'm sure will be brief.
Thank you. It will be very brief. I was the original sponsor of Senate Bill 451, and so I guess I'm responsible for this bill being here because I made a mistake when I wrote it and presented it to Senator Duchesne. We did not realize that we were inadvertently taking away the ability of a county assessor to hold our feet to the fire, as it were. When we were putting the bill through the committees, Senate Appropriations said that they wanted to make sure that the money that would be in tax savings would inure to the benefit of the residents. We agreed. That's what's in our contract. That's the way it works. But to make sure that that was the case, they wanted to make sure that it was written into the bill. Unfortunately, because of the statute of limitations with escape assessments that we did not consider at the time, counties may lose that ability if the money is held in reserve. This bill simply corrects that and makes sure that we do what we're supposed to do. The counties are able to make sure that we do what we're supposed to do, and the money properly flows to the benefit of the residents as it is supposed to do underneath the Military Housing Privatization Initiative and under Senate Bill 451, and I ask your vote too.
All right, thank you. Witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? All right, seeing none, I certainly will move the bill. Do pass as amended, and we will await the committee. Would you like to close?
I ask for your aye vote.
Please call the roll.
Wolf?
Aye.
Wolf, aye.
You have one vote.
The most important one.
That's right.
The rest of the committee will appear.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Wright, our last item for the day. Welcome, SB 530. Item 4, I meant. Senator Wright. Thank you for working with the committee.
Oh, let me
on the amendments.
The committee staff.
Well,
without objection, Madam Chair, we would take. I guess we'll amend it in our next iteration. I'm sorry, it's kind of loud over there. The amendments that staff proposed. We'll probably want to look at one thing in the composition of the committee. I want to note that I would like to get someone from the CPUC to be a part of the group, and note that and it might be that we would,
yes,
maybe have one academic and one PUC, and note that the FCC may not give us a human being, and so, they're being in Washington, but I think it would be good to have someone from that body there.
I agree with that. So we'll include that as an amendment.
Madam Chair, the SB 530 ultimately becomes about equity. In California, there's roughly $6 to $8 billion collected annually for utility services, and it comes in various forms. Sometimes it's called a UUT. I'm going to ask the sergeant to pass this out, and I'll describe it later. UUT is a utility users tax. Sometimes it comes in the form of a franchise fee. Sometimes it comes in the form of a sales tax. I mean, the taxes vary, but you'll find, particularly for local governments, that utility taxes are one of the primary ways in which they get sources of revenue. In 1996, an industry was coming into its own called direct satellite broadcasting. And the FCC, in their wisdom, decided that they really wanted to ensure that this industry grew. And they recognized that by withholding local taxes, that it would give them the advantage, since much of what they did didn't have local boundaries, that it would give them an opportunity to function and grow. But what the FCC was very clear to do is say that the obligation of the state, the ability of the state to impose the tax, was not taken away. And so in the same act, Part 602 of the Telecom Act, they spell out that absolutely local governments are precluded from being able to put any tax on a satellite broadcaster. But they also said at the end of that same passage that the state is not preempted from being able to impose that tax. This bill, members, says that, yes, we will be able to impose the tax, and that we would do what 9 other states already do. California will not be the first. There are currently 9 states who collect a tax on their direct satellite broadcasters. There's a lot of concern, and some of it I'll raise. Since most of the money that's collected by a utility fee, since the vast majority of that goes to local governments, this is specified to essentially go into a fund that returns it ultimately back to local governments in the area of public safety. So it creates a funding source, and to the extent that we can, we return it almost pro rata back to the local governments that it came from. So much of this would be police, protection, district attorneys, sheriffs would be the primary beneficiaries of the money. The sheet that I've passed out to you is a wireless bill. And I point out, because I thought it was important, wireless is somewhat analogous to a satellite broadcaster in that there's no wire. If you look at the bottom of that sheet, even though the wireless broadcaster doesn't have wires and is not connected to anything, he still pays the utility users tax. This is one from Sacramento. He still pays for the 911. He still pays for the high cost fund. Clearly, the high cost fund is for rural areas where you're trying to string wire. All of those charges are still paid for by the wireless carrier, in spite of the fact that he doesn't have any relationship to them. The satellite broadcaster, likewise, should have to make those same charges. Every time someone in Sacramento moves from a cable system, in the case of Sacramento, Comcast, to a satellite broadcaster, Sacramento loses between $12 and $15 per month per subscriber. They don't have a reduction in service demand. They don't have a reduction in the need for service. The cost of providing the police service doesn't go down depending upon which option you take to get your video service. The purpose of the act, as I said, was to provide a lower barrier of entry and provide competition in the delivery of satellite or video services, period. That's been achieved. In California, almost 40% of the video service is now provided by a direct satellite broadcaster. But that also means, Madam Chair, that that fund that statewide was probably close to about $1.2 billion or $1.3 billion is now down to somewhere around $700,000 or $800,000 because of the people who are in satellite broadcasting who don't pay anything. This is about equity. It's not sponsored by the cable industry. I just think that in this era, when we're looking at funding for local government and you're watching them lose $12 to $15 per month per subscriber for essentially receiving the same service that people had been receiving before, this levels somewhat the playing field. Ultimately, what you want to do with this, Madam Chair, is say that if you choose to get your video service from a satellite broadcaster, or if you choose to get it from a cable, or if you choose to get it from an incumbent telephone company who now have UVerse and Verizon all providing video services, irrespective of the platform you choose to get the service from, there shouldn't be a discount, and that choice shouldn't be clouded because the government charges a fee to one and it doesn't charge it on the other. There are no utility services in the state of California that currently do not pay a tax except the direct satellite broadcaster. That company should not have that advantage over all of the other people who provide the exact same service. Again, the Telecom Act of '96 recognized that, and it gave the states the option of being able to impose a tax. It made clear that that was a state option and not a local option. 9 states have already done that. This would be an immediate infusion of nearly $300 million into the local government coffers. I would ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Wright. And we have a series of amendments in front of us that have to do with performance evaluation, setting up this committee, a report from the LAO, and how long it remains operative. So with that, witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Come forward. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
We'll go back to witnesses in support.
Lenny Goldberg, California Tax Reform Association. We think this is a matter of tax equity and tax avoidance. There were some odd cases where they said the satellite that was permanently fixed over Long Beach did not count as property in California, so we do think this is one of those issues that should be addressed.
All right. Further witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Please begin. Welcome.
All right. Good morning. Thank you, Senator. My name is Damon Stewart. I'm with DirecTV, here to testify in opposition to Senate Bill 530. With me is Brian Smith, also with DirecTV, and Ann Patterson with Orica, counsel to DirecTV and Dish. Thank you, Chairwoman, for this opportunity to speak in opposition to this bill, and Vice Chairman Huff and members of the committee. I appreciate the time. Again, to provide testimony on this bill that will add a new 6% tax on satellite providers only. I'm here to urge you to oppose this discriminatory tax. If I may, I just want to provide some very brief, I know you've been here a while, some quick background on DirecTV. We're a California company. We're headquartered in El Segundo, right next to the airport. We have around 5,000 employees in the state and over around 30 locations, 30 facilities throughout the state. We provide, of course, direct broadcast satellite television services to customers across the United States and internationally. Much of the work we do, by the way, is here in California, from the design and construction of satellites to the gathering of content and that broadcast of that content to subscribers throughout the country. We're proud of our California roots. We're a committed California corporate citizen, and we pay taxes. We pay our share of taxes. We pay income taxes, payroll taxes, property taxes. By way of example, we have a facility in Yolo County. In that facility, we pay property taxes. I know we pay payroll taxes, utility taxes for the water and sewer hookups, fire permits were required, business license taxes, sales taxes on all the equipment we sell. We pay taxes. We object to Senate Bill 530 that imposes a tax on provision of satellite TV because it will increase the monthly bills for about 3.8 million families in California, and it penalizes innovation. Let me be very clear. I respectfully reject the assertion that the bill is about fairness or leveling the playing field. This bill, as is commonly seen throughout the country, pushed very aggressively by our friends in the cable industry, is about getting one competitive advantage for one company over the other, getting a price advantage, raising the costs of the other company in order to gain back some lost market share as technology and innovation has caused some erosion of that to the cable industry. The bill, in essence, penalizes innovation. At the heart of the matter, I think, of the franchise fees, and the premise that I would respectfully challenge is that franchise fees are not taxes. Franchise fees are rent paid for the use of other people's property. Essentially, the cable company has, when they come into an area, they have equipment. That equipment must be placed throughout the public right-of-way, the public roads, public sidewalks, utility poles. Obviously, the cable companies don't own that property. The public does, and the cable companies don't, nor should they expect to get free use of others' property for their business model. And the compensation for the use of laying those cables are franchise fees. Essentially, what it comes down to is a cost of doing business. What I think, and the difference is with our business model, is innovation. We have come up with an operating system that doesn't require us to physically place our equipment on somebody else's property, so there's no need for that rental payment. The content gets beamed directly down from satellites to the owner's or the subscriber's home. The favorite analogy I have, I think it's apt, is that of the railroads and the airlines. You can watch cable or satellite, you will see the same television program. You can take a train or a plane to get to the same destination. The railroads, very similar to cable, to operate their service, must lay their equipment across other people's property, the tracks, like the cables. And they must pay rights-of-way fees, easements, that sort of thing. That's their inherent cost of operating the railroad. The airlines, quite obviously, don't have to utilize that land. The suggestion in the bill that the equivalent tax has to be paid, I think, is similar to saying, the railroad saying, you should tax airline passengers an equivalent amount that the railroads have to pay for their easements and their rights of way. I suggest that's not logical, nor is it fair.
I'm going to ask you to sum up.
Of course.
Thank you.
Well, again, thank you for the time. Essentially, I'll just remind the members also that satellite TV is often the only option for many people. There's 3.8 million subs in California. It's often their last source of entertainment, news. This higher tax is going to further strain an already challenged quality of life they have in these economic times. And again, I think if the idea, and I can appreciate the very serious nature of the budget situation, I just would suggest that if additional taxes revenues are seen as a potential answer, targeting one industry over the other would not be the most logical nor fairest way to achieve that goal. Thank you.
Thank you. In opposition?
Yeah, my name is Ann Patterson from ORC. I'm here to answer any technical questions either about the Commerce Clause or if you have questions about Section 602 of the Telecommunications Act.
In opposition?
Yes, my name is Brian Smith. I'm actually the tax director for DirecTV. So my day in, day out job is actually paying all the bills. And I have like a 10-page report of business licenses and permits for all of my locations in California. We are paying our taxes when we're there. And one thing we have to remember, we're pretty much looking at potentially, taxing PCs but not taxing Macs here. I mean, they're getting the same benefit. It's just two different technologies are being used. And we don't really think that's too equitable. And just as a company, we don't avoid taxes. I was here in '93 before the company got going. And when we sat down, today the big thing is Amazon. Amazon says, I'm not going to pay taxes. I'm not there. DirecTV, as a corporate citizen, said, we have satellites 22,000 miles up. Back then, we had physical facilities in 3 states. Did we go to Florida and say we're not going to pay taxes? No. We registered, we started collecting and remitting. We've been doing that across the United States. We are paying taxes in every state. We are paying taxes to California. Over the past 5 years, about $30 million in sales and use tax. So we're doing our part. We're not kind of hiding behind the bush waiting to be caught. We're not threatening to pull out of the state if you impose a tax on us. So it's we're trying to be good corporate citizens here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. In opposition?
No, in support.
In support.
I'm late, and I apologize to the
Go ahead.
committee. I was
Go
at another meeting. Madam Chair, members of the committee, my name is John Lovell, and I'm with the California Police Chiefs Association. We're in support of this bill. Parenthetically, I'm a DirecTV user myself. This, first of all, keep in mind that as interesting as the argument of the first witness was, and it was an interesting argument, there are 9 states that tax both satellite and cable. So this is not a public policy Rubicon of a major nature that we're asking you to cross. And the funding for this will go to public safety. And I will tell you that public safety is hurting very badly right now. There are many jurisdictions where we're looking at not being able to have 24-hour patrol. In these times of crisis, I think we need to look to ways to address these needs, particularly public safety, which is the highest role of government. We're strongly in support of this, and we'd commend an aye vote to this committee.
All right. Further witnesses in support? Further witnesses in opposition, which is where we were. All right. Seeing none, comments by the committee or questions? Motion?
I don't wanted to respond.
He can certainly close.
Okay.
I'm waiting to see if there's a motion. All right. It's been moved to pass as amended. Questions?
Yeah, it's reading more along the way in the comment. I've dialogued with the author on this prior to this. I was on a city council for 9 years, and we did franchise fees. I agree with the opponent. it was usually because you're laying wire in the street, you're putting up telephone or power poles or something else, that requires some space. And clearly this does not. Additionally, the franchise usually had a requirement that they service everybody, even the more difficult ones to do, but it was sort of a contractual agreement for, at that time, an exclusive ability to service, and it was sort of a monopoly, and they had to pay something in place. We created some competition when we realigned things a few years back, but I just don't see the nexus to where it fits the satellite TV. As they said, they're already paying taxes. This would be in addition. I can certainly appreciate the desire to fund police services, public safety more, but money's fungible. So if this gets directed to police, there's going to be other line items of the budget that are taken out of police. So that argument doesn't sway me. If public safety is the highest priority, then we fund it. That's my belief. We find a way to do it. This is one way to do it. It's not the only way to do it, nor do I believe it will be in addition to. I believe it will be money instead of other money. And so it comes back down to, we have a corporate citizen that has a significant presence in our state that are paying taxes. If this is put in here, it will be passed on to the consumer, which makes this more complicated, more expensive. To that degree, one reason I believe they were given incentives in the first place or not saddled with this was so that they could come up to speed, they could be competitive, because competition we recognize is good in the marketplace. It gives people choices. When you have choices, it keeps the cost down for everybody. But to put your foot on the neck of one company at the expense of the others also can be a problem. So I just don't see the compelling need to raise the taxes here. I see that it could create a business model that is unsustainable for them over the long run, or diminishes their presence rather than increases our competition. And so I think that while I can appreciate the desire to get revenues, we're scrambling everywhere looking for that. I don't think this is the way to go, so I can't be supporting it today.
All right, further committee comments? Senator Wright, would you like to close and respond to some of these issues? Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Kehoe.
Sorry to keep delaying your comments, but I just, since I made the motion, I want to speak to the merits of the bill very briefly. First of all, thank you for taking the amendments. I think performance measures and the sunset heighten the accountability, and we'll have a chance to look at the effectiveness of the bill as time goes on. And I think the analysis also pointed out some key policy points. First being that the growth of satellite television, I don't want to call brand names, has now achieved the level of competitive parity intended under the Telecommunications Act of '96. It's reasonable to look at the tax and fee disparity between cable, direct broadcast, and other video services. And I think Senator Wright is trying to address that. I notice in the analysis also a number of other bills have attempted to go down this road before. It's not easy, but there is an element of parity here that I think we should address. So that's why I moved the bill. Thank you.
All right, Senator Wright, would you care to close?
Thank you. There are a couple of things I think that are important. The franchise fee that is paid by a cable television company once upon a time represented a franchise. That's no longer the case. And because it's no longer the case, that's why we cap it at a certain amount of money. It also bears no relationship whatsoever to laying cable in the ground. Most cable television is run aerially, and they pay a pole fee for every one of the poles that they collect to. So the notion that they're paying, renting the space on ground is just factually inaccurate. Cable, for the most part, is in the air. They pay a fee for that. In fact, former Assemblywoman Gwen Moore created a regulation that specified how much they would pay per pole, and that became a national standard. So the notion that you're putting cable in the ground, that's just not true. The 5% cap was just a fee. It is indeed called a franchise fee, but it really, if it was based on renting space, then the fee would have to be based on how much space you rent. Because it's capped at a fixed dollar amount, it clearly is not a franchise fee. So the factual reference is it's not a franchise fee. That's just wrong. It's an amount of money that we extract. This is the only utility service for which we don't collect a fee. I brought you the bill earlier of a cell phone carrier. The analogy that the gentleman raised relative to the airplane, the cell phone carrier also pays a utility users tax in the city of Sacramento. He pays for the high cost fund. The high cost fund, by the way, is what ensures that people in rural areas have a telephone. That means that the cell phone carrier, who doesn't have any relationship to the landline in a rural area, is supporting the landline's coverage. That is current law. He already does that. On your bill, you pay a lifeline surcharge. You pay high cost fund B. By the way, if you lived in one of those rural areas, you would be able to actually take video service off of the telephone line that runs through your area that's paid for with the high cost fund that is also funded by the cell phone carrier. Again, there should be no distinction made between a provider of utility service because of the Telecom Act or any other thing. The reason that they don't pay isn't because of anything other than the fact that the Telecom Act wanted to take a nascent industry that had no opportunity to survive and see to it that they did. But the Telecom Act and the federal government were wise enough to say that the state retained, if I could read for just one paragraph, preservation of state authority. This section shall not be construed to prevent taxation of a provider of direct-to-home satellite service by a state or prevent a local jurisdicting agency from receiving revenue derived from a tax or fee imposed and collected by a state. The Telecom Act made clear that the right to do this was given to the state. By the way, the cable operator also pays the same taxes that he pays. He pays his employees, he pays property tax, he pays all of the taxes. In fact, every business in California pays those taxes. So for him to say that he pays a tax that no one else pays is poppycock. He's the only one who doesn't pay the utility tax that every other utility pays, whether it's a cell phone carrier, whether or not it's a landline carrier, whether or not it's the gas company, whether or not it's any utility in the state of California pays a fee to the state or the local government. They were given a carve-out in 1996. They were also given the way out. I read to you what was written into the statute. 9 states have already done it. They have sued in some of those states and lost every one of those lawsuits. I would ask for your aye vote because this is about equity, and when a person chooses his video subscriber, it should be based not on whether or not you can avoid the tax. It should be based on the fact that you like the service better. If they provide better service, people will buy it because it's the best service. It shouldn't be because you can avoid paying a 5% franchise fee. I'd ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Senator Wright. That is your close. The motion is to pass to appropriations. Thank you again for as amended. Thank you for the agreeing to the amendments that make it a better bill. I appreciate it.
Let me thank the staff as well for the thoughtful addition to the bill, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Walk.
Aye.
Walk, aye. Huff. Huff, no. DeSaulnier. Fuller. Fuller, no. Hancock. Hancock, aye. Hernandez. Kehoe. Aye. Kehoe, aye. LaMalfa. Lou.
3-2. It needs 5 votes to be successful, and we are calling the absent members so that we can close the committee. You are the last bill. Thank you, Senator Wright. All right, we are waiting for the committee.
Walt,
yes.
If you wouldn't mind opening the roll on some of these, I do have to go back to another committee.
Okay. Is Senator DeSaulnier just outside? Can you call him in? At least we can do that. Yes, of course. If he's there. Yes. I changed my mind and voted aye. Okay, I will open the roll. How are we doing with Senator Liu and Senator Hernandez? All right, let's open the roll. Item number 1, SB 228. The recommendation has changed. My recommendation is aye. for Senator Wyland was a wobbler anyway for me. The vote is 3-0.
Huff. Huff, aye. DeSaulnier. DeSaulnier, aye. Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Hernandez. Kehoe. Kehoe, aye. Lou.
6-0, that is out. We'll keep the roll. We'll keep the roll open for the absent members. Item number 2, SB 314, Senator Vargas. The recommendation was do pass as amended. It has one vote. Please call the roll.
Huff. Huff, aye. DeSaulnier. DeSaulnier, aye. Fuller. Fuller, aye. Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Hernandez. Kehoe. Kehoe, aye. LaMalfa. Lou. Lou, aye.
It has 7 votes. That is sufficient to pass, but we'll leave it open for the absent members. Item number 4, SB 530, Senator Wright. The motion is 5-0. Do pass as amended to appropriations. Please call the roll. Do pass as amended to appropriations. It is 3-2 at the moment. Senator Wright.
Huff. DeSaulnier.
Madam Chair?
Chair recommending aye. Vice Chair recommending no.
I just want to make a comment. I'm going to follow your leadership and vote aye today, but I'm going to spend a little more time on the bill before it hits if it hits the floor.
Hernandez. LaMalfa. Lou. Lou, aye. You have 5-2.
It is 5-2. That's sufficient. No, that is sufficient to move out. We will leave the roll open for the moment. Item number 6, Senator Padilla, SB 686. That is 5-0. The recommendation was aye, and it was due pass as amended to appropriations.
DeSaulnier. DeSaulnier, aye. Hancock.
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Kehoe. Kehoe, aye. Lou. Lou, aye.
9-0. That bill is out. All right. If we have Senator Hernandez and Senator LaMalfa and Senator Huff. Education. So, do we have Huff on all the bills? And Lou, but how about Huff? Huff is done. Okay. All right. We'll open the roll on item number 1, Senator AB 228. Senator Wyland, Chair voted aye on this bill. Changed my recommendation to pass to appropriations. Was a wobbler for me. I did vote for aye as amended. No, do pass. No amendments.
Okay. Hernandez. Lou. Lou, aye. It's 7-0.
All right, 7-0, and we'll leave it open for the absent member.
It's 8-0.
8-0.
I'm just missing Hernandez.
It is enough to pass, but we'll leave it open for the absent member. Which one? All right, let's open the roll on SB 314. Senator Vargas, do pass as amended to appropes. Chair voting aye.
LaMalfa. Aye. LaMalfa, aye. So it's 7.
8-0, and we'll leave that open for the absent member. Senator Wright's bill, SB 530. We'll open the roll on that. Chair voting aye. Vice Chair voting no. Do pass as amended to appropes.
LaMalfa? LaMalfa, no. That's 3-5.
It's 5-3. It's 5-3, and that we will leave that open for the absent member. We'll wait for Senator Hernandez. All right, let's open up the roll on SB 228. Senator Wyland, Chair recommending aye. Do pass to appropriations.
Hernandez? Aye. Hernandez, aye.
That is 9-0. That bill is out. Item number 2, SB 314. Senator Vargas, Chair voting aye. It is 8-0. Do pass as amended to the floor.
Hernandez? Aye. Hernandez, aye.
That is 9-0. That bill is out. SB 530, item 4, Senator Wright. Do pass as amended to appropriations. It is 5-3.
Hernandez?
That
Hernandez
is,
not voting.
That is 5-3, and that bill is out. Item number 6, SB 686, Senator Padilla. Do pass as amended to appropes. The vote is, that is out. 9-0, that bill is out. All right, the commission, this committee is adjourned.